Gwan, how you there? What's good? And you know who this is, baby. The number one podcast in America, dedicated to all you kings and queens of color, homies and homettes, shotters, woo gals, G-boys, and charges. The one and only Jerk Jollof and Collard Greens podcast.
Wagwan, are you there? What's good? And welcome to the Jollof and Collard Greens podcast. It's your host and humble extrovert, Glenn AKA G-ransome. And for today's discussion, I have the honor and the blessing of chopping it up one-on-one with educator, leader, artist, blogger, motivational speaker, and co-founder of the Onadaso 360 organization, and definitely someone you need to start following today, Mr. Tim Swain. And for those that are not in the know, Tim Swain is a Texas native that has permanently relocated to Ghana, has been doing so for the last 2 years alongside his wife and son. So the focus of this social exchange will be capturing his experiences, tips, and advice for all of our listeners considering life outside of America or expatriation from wherever you reside, especially if Ghana is on your list of final destinations, as well as his insight on what you should know and need to be prepared or expect before taking the leap, and plenty more right after we pay these tributes. So before we get any further, if you aren't already a follower, perhaps tuning in for the first time, like to learn more about the show, definitely check us out on Instagram at Jollof Collard Pod, where you can stay up to date on our latest offerings, announcements, and join the JJC community. So without further ado, let's chop and let's bring it directly to our guest, our honored guest today, because I'm personally a fan. You know, as you mentioned in our discussion before, I've been following your content. Expatting is something that's been on my list of things to do, my end goals in life, just finding that peace, you know, that as a Black man in particular, young Black man, I feel like it's just not existing today in America. So before I lead in anymore, let's go straight into the introduction and get straight to business. Mr. Tim Swain, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Also, I love the name of the podcast. Man, it's very, it's like a fusion of all these cultures, and I see like the Pan-African kind of fusion coming together in the name. But I'm blessed to be here, and I'm looking forward to sharing some information. I hopefully will help some people.
Definitely, I appreciate that, my brother, because you know the idea behind the name was, you know, we're all members of the diaspora, so it was just like, you know, I'm being, you know, Jamaican descent. My brothers that are on the podcast are Nigerian. We also have our Black Americans, African Americans. It was the idea that we're bringing a Thanksgiving of all these different ideas, identities. So, you know, in America, it's always confused for it to be a melting pot, but it's really more or less a tossed salad. We all have our identities, our cultures.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely appreciate that. So tell us about yourself before you relocated. You know, I understand that you were born and raised in Texas.
Yeah.
And you resided in Indianapolis with your family for a few years before moving. So I guess tell us about your life, you know, what was life like for you in Texas and Indianapolis in the States before the move?
Yeah, so good question, man. I would say just to kind of summarize it, you know, my background is in higher education administration. So I worked a long time with college students, universities, worked at community colleges as well as a couple universities. And I've always had this yearning to empower Black people. In fact, the first book that transformed my life was the autobiography of Malcolm X. When I read that book, it was the first time that I kind of saw through the eyes of an empowered Black person that was unafraid to speak to the power structure, as well as, you know, have this religious transformation and see that practically lived out in his life. And I was looking for that. I was yearning for that. So throughout my journey, I also went through a spiritual transformation. I got into a relationship with God, and I always had this burning desire of like, okay, now that I have a relationship with God, I still got these questions around my Blackness and my identity. Never had a lot of answers, especially when I went to the church. I didn't have a lot of answers. I went to a lot of other people who didn't have answers. But there was always something inside of me. So I took my first trip to Ghana in 2007 to transform my life. After that, I came back. I put it in the back of my mind, this kind of fusion of who I am and my spiritual, my ethnic, and my cultural identity and all that. But I didn't really know how to live it out. Things came to a head in 2014 where it was like a lot of stuff was going on, of course, with Mike Brown and what may have you. But I think all of that to say was it was a culmination of always having this desire to help people of African descent, fusing a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. And at the same time, the more and more I knew about the structures in the US, the more I would say sober-minded I became about the realities of what it meant to be Black in the US. And all of that kind of culminated with my trip to Ghana that we'll talk about a little bit later. But that's a little bit about my background: higher education administration, working, moved into quote unquote middle class America and realized, all right, is this it?
Exactly.
But yeah.
Yeah, the middle class, the most stressed class in
Seriously,
America,
seriously.
the backbone of America. And, you mentioning Malcolm X's autobiography, he was well known for his pilgrimage back, to the Mecca. And, the experience of that changed him ultimately. So it's definitely good to see, the relevance there and the impact. And like, this is an actual experience. And he also spoke about the sense of, I guess, consciousness we have, particularly as brothers within the States. You mentioned Mike Brown, and I don't imagine anyone's not aware, but for those who aren't, I believe it was August 9th in 2014, where Michael Brown, a then 18-year-old, was shot dead by Ferguson police, and his body was left there in the sweltering heat for about 4 hours before there was any response, any reaction to actually move his body or cover it up. So it almost seemed as if it was just like a public execution of this young man, where no attention was given to his needs or his care. And it kind of set an example, for Black men, Black Americans, Black women in particular, in this country, it felt like. And we could definitely jump on that a little bit more, but, definitely a great point you raised there. So I understand that you're also a family man. So it wasn't only a move for yourself, but it was also a move for your wife and son as well also.
It was. And that whole situation with Mike Brown really was a critical moment for me, because I knew that Ghana was a part of my future. Because as I said, my first trip to Ghana was actually in 2007. I went with a missions organization. It's an organization called the Impact Movement that primarily works with communities of African descent. And between 2007 and 2014, I went one other time, again with a church organization. But in 2014, that's when I actually started the idea of the nonprofit organization I have. And what happened was, I went to Ferguson, Missouri, and I marched with the NAACP. For those who don't know, that's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, so almost like a civil rights organization. And I marched with them, and I remember marching from where Mike Brown was shot. And when we went there, I forget what month it was, but some of the blood was still on the ground. And we walked through to the Capitol, and we walked through a small town called Rosebud, Missouri. And I remember walking through this town, and, I wasn't alive in the 60s, but I remember the covers of the magazines where you see like the dogs and the fire hoses and stuff like that. And it was literally just like that: take out the dogs and the fire hoses, but people yelling the most obscene stuff. It was crazy. You had some good white folks that was marching with us, that was, giving us food and water and stuff. But I went through this experience, and immediately in December, I went to Ghana to do setup work for a trip. And I just had this moment where I was literally like spiritually and emotionally contorted, because it was like, here I am in my own nation, where I feel like less than a man, a stain on the fabric of America. Then I come to Ghana, and I just exist as a human being. And I start reflecting on, like, what kind of life do I want for my son? Like, do I want my son to inherit the same racial traumas that I have inherited? And that became a part of my mental shift. And I think some years later, it was like, I told my wife, I said, I think the next move for our lives is Ghana. And it took a lot of planning, but those moments, particularly around Mike Brown and me reflecting on my son and his life and his legacy, and just growing up as a young boy, I said, you know what, I have to do something better for him. I have to.
Definitely hear that. That's very powerful, especially because it's like, essentially, how do you even explain that to a child as well? And we're always put in this, state of defense. So let's talk a little bit more, and we'll get more into that as well as we go into, why you chose Ghana and, the reasons that built up to the eventual move, because I understand there's actually a timeline of how you did it. And it wasn't just a one-stop drop go. You actually took your time to integrate yourself. So,
yeah.
But before we get there, let's talk about your organization that you're the co-founder of. It's an NGO, nonprofit, non-governmental. I believe you started that with Dr. Rome Meeks as well, who's your founder, and it's called Anidaso 360. All right. Can you tell us a little bit about what the organization is about, its mission, and we'll go into like a brief summary of the programs and how people can support, virtually overseas and locally.
Yeah, no doubt. So the name of the organization, the English way or the American way of saying it is Anidaso, but it's actually an Akan word, or word in tree. Here, tree is a language in Ghana. I spelled TWY. And the word is Inidaso, which means hope. And so Hope 360. And so it started from me and my colleague, Rome Meeks, having a conversation about the state of Black men in America. And we were in my kitchen. Long story short, we left the conversation and we said, listen, if we don't do something about the problems we've just been talking about, then we're just as much a part of the problem as anybody else. And we said, I don't know what to do. And we said, well, let's just try to take Black men back to Africa. Let's do like a leadership trip that combines like this rites of passage and all this learning. Let's get into like a deeper biblical understanding about history and their Black identity and their God identity. And let's have them wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and do all these crazy stuff. And then let's climb up the tallest mountain in Ghana. And so we did it. We took probably about $15,000 to $20,000 of our own pockets, which I don't recommend people do. Got zero financial return, but we did that. We formed our first trip. We did it again. This time we invited men and women, not just college students, to be a part of a 2-week trip. And then from there, we just kept mobilizing people to go back and forth to Ghana for a leadership experience. And on top of that, we have some other programs and services that we're working on right now, particularly around, I think you'll mention in a second, but our ambassadors program, which is in essence people who have a desire to be advocates for telling the African story, for empowering people, not just about Africa, but about the practical stuff that we need, in terms of financial empowerment, mental health, spiritual and cultural understanding. And so we have some programs and services that we offer, but the main thing that we're doing right now is mobilizing people to go back and forth to the continent.
Got it. And overall, the mission of Anidaso, I mean, you're probably gonna have to correct me every time, probably, but Hope 360, being able to empower and equip disenfranchised communities through education. And, one of the ways that you mentioned on how you do this is just like 3 programs available currently. And you mentioned the program in particular for young men, I believe, which is the ambassadors program. Am I correct?
So the one that's specifically for men, so we have basically our cultural immersion program and our educational program. The cultural immersion is basically the stuff that's happening here in Ghana. There's 2 programs that happen in Ghana. One is only for men. That's a 5-week program in the summertime. And then there's one for men and women of all 18 and up. And that's Sankofa 360. And that's happens various times of the year. In fact, the most recent one happened last month in December. And that's for 18 and up, men and women of all ages, whatever backgrounds. We particularly focus on leaders of African descent. But we don't discriminate if someone wants to be a part of an experience that is not of African descent. But the focus is developing leaders of African descent so they can come, but it's 100% totally focused on developing leaders of African descent. And then on the state side, we have the ambassadors program, which is one of the things we recently did was like an educational series on, and this was for anybody at all, where we opened it up. And we just did a series on different workshops, free workshops, virtual workshops on, I think it was like Black Health Matters, Black Money Matters, Black Philanthropy Matters, and then some other leadership focused things. But it's all about really the practical things that we need to be successful in society, but really coming from the perspective of how does this impact Black communities.
Understood. Now, how can someone, overseas possibly or help support this cause or your organization? What ways are we afforded to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. And one of the main ways that folks can do right now is be a part of our mailing list. We're actually in the process of rebranding. We just hired some consultants to come in and take a look at our organization so we can scrap a bunch of stuff and reinvent ourselves. And so we're in the process of actually having a whole new slot of volunteer opportunities, educational seminars that will be presented in 2022. And so folks that's interested, of course, there's always a financial way, but aside from finances, if a person just wants to get involved on any level, go to the website. I believe you guys had a website information printed somewhere. Go to their website, be a part of our mailing list, and we'll make sure to keep you updated with the volunteer opportunities, the opportunities to invest financially, what we're doing, and how you can even possibly be a part of one of our cultural immersion trips.
Understood. And just for reference for our listeners out there, you can find the organization ANIDASO360 on IG and Twitter at ANIDASO360. And the website is ANIDASO360.com. So that way we'll also have that in our meeting notes, well for the post of this discussion and our description as well. And thank you for that nice detailed summary about the organization. Definitely wanted to capture that. Especially, it seems like for those that are considering the move, your organization, could possibly be one of those ways they can get a glimpse of what's really going on in Ghana and get a feel for it as well. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All
right, so now let's get into your relocation. Your reasons for permanently relocating, your experiences in Ghana. As I followed and on your YouTube channel, Tim Swain, you have the series dedicated to what to consider if you have a family and the pros and cons, dislikes and things of that sort. You detailed your experiences on your YouTube channel. But for those that may not be in the know and help get some exposure to that as well, can you just tell us, how long have you been residing in Ghana currently?
Yeah, so this is almost going on 2 years permanently. So December 4th will officially make 2 years of this year.
Wow. Congratulations. I'll definitely have to send an anniversary note to you come December.
Hey, man, send it, man. Send it.
Like keep the fight. So what are the main reasons you decided to leave America? And I know one of the things you highlighted was the Michael Brown incident in Ferguson, Missouri. And, I guess what were some of the other reasons, if there were any, you decided to relocate? And lastly, why did you choose Ghana?
Yeah. I'll start with the first question first, the last question you asked first, because it's the easiest. Ghana was honestly the only place I feel so embarrassed to say this, it's the only place in the continent I've been to thus far.
Okay.
it's on my list actually to go to other countries in 2022, but that's why Ghana, honestly, because it was the only country I've been to, and we have relationships here. We had an NGO that operates here, so it just made sense. So the main reasons was because, number one, I wanted to create a different kind of life and legacy and exposure for my son and for my family, and even for myself, honestly. I mean, like being Black in America is stressful. It's stressful, especially if you're a Black man. It's stressful.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing was I really wanted to grow roots with my organization, because coming for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 5 weeks at a time, you really don't understand the culture in depth until you live here. And some of the work that we do is specifically around helping build entrepreneurs in Ghana, working with farmers, also working with children in terms of giving them an education that extends beyond just studying for a test, but really some skills and things like that. And so what I realized was, if you really want to have an impact, I'm talking about like for real impact, you have to be in that place that you want to impact. So it was really trying to create a different type of opportunity for my family. The second thing was to build better bridges with my organization and deeper roots. And I think the last thing was, it sounds real simple, but when I started looking at the next phase of my life, I literally couldn't see anything else other than Ghana at that point. It was like, I literally don't know what else to do except move to Ghana. That is literally what we're going to do. I had no other plan.
Understood. And, this is definitely a topic, relocating or expatriating is definitely a topic that's, thrown around a bit between myself and my podcast mates and my friends and my fellow brothers here. And one of the arguments we tend to get, as far as, why one should not consider expatriating is essentially, I guess, what led you, seeing that you've been so involved in the movement and the mobilization, of people of color, Black people in America. I guess what part of you said, okay, staying and fighting is no longer in my purview. Like staying in America and trying to address the issues here is, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess what part of relocating became the plan as opposed to, I guess, staying and enduring and going through and hoping for the best for Black Americans?
Yeah. You know, I think that sometimes what we do is, and I've heard that argument so much where it's like, this is how it goes. Man, I'm not finna move nowhere because I gotta keep fighting for what my ancestors built right here. Or my ancestors fought and bled and they wanted me to go back, so I'm gonna go back. But I think we don't understand the reality of our identity duality. The fact is, this is what people don't understand. This is a fact. A lot of us, especially African Americans, because we grew up in America, our world is always black and white. White institutions created Black people in terms of race, Black people, right? Not in terms of human beings, but like the concept of what it means to be Black. That was created by racist institutions. And if you were born and raised in America, you really don't know life outside of racism. But the crazy thing is, like, I live in Ghana, and I'm telling you, we don't understand how much even privilege we have when you have that blue passport. We don't understand even certain system things that we could talk about later in this interview if we want to keep it real, that you have access to in America. So I think the reality is, it's not that I wanted to leave America and give up on America. It's just that I wanted to create an alternative. In the same way where if you live in the States, ain't nothing wrong with having some homeboys or homegirls. If you live in Texas, some homeboys or homegirls in New York. So wherever you go to New York, you can go out there. Or let's just even say business-wise. You got some connects in a different state. You can do business in that different state versus saying, nah, I'm finna stay right here in Texas, man. I got to fight and die. No, like, we have to become transcontinental human beings who understand that just because you live or even move somewhere else doesn't mean that you've forsaken everything else over here. In fact, I think that more of us should really be looking into how can we build more bridges in the diaspora. You don't have to live here, but just build relationships, because what you do is you understand the reality of opportunities that exist in different places. But because so many of us have so little experience and we think in such dualistic terms, either this or either that, we don't even understand opportunities when they're right in front of our faces because we've never traveled and we think my job is in America, like I can't serve my people unless I'm there. Last thing I'll say about that is I think everything goes back down to purpose. Like when you know what you're supposed to be doing, I think that brings way more clarity than other things. Like what I'm supposed to be doing in my life, one of the things is mobilizing people of African descent to understand who God has created them to be, specifically in their cultural and ethnic identity. For a fact, that's what I know I'm supposed to be doing.
Understood, and very well said. And I couldn't agree anymore, my brother. I really couldn't. So let's talk about your timeline before your transition to Ghana. So basically, you were visiting Ghana on and off, 2007, between 2007 and 2014. I believe you made the decision with your wife to make the move somewhere in 2017, not too long, a couple years after the Ferguson incident with Michael Brown and the march. And in 2019, you decided to move to Ghana, December 4th, 2019. All right.
Yeah.
So I guess you took quite a bit of time, reasonably so, to make that move and make that transition. I guess, what were your goals between going back and forth, and why was that important to you to make those several trips, or to take that period of time essentially to make the move?
Yeah, I think the going back and forth was always connected with my organization. It was always doing some setup trips for the next trip. But the planning, now I'm a planner. I believe in you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan. I mean, nobody's not a smart person is even going to move to a different city without a game plan. And the reality was, it's a lot to move overseas. And the truth is, when I leave America, I'm not a Black American. I'm not African American no more. When I come to Ghana, I'm an American. That's the first thing that they see about me. So it was important for me, number one, because I have a family. So everything that I do, every step that I take has to be calculated a little bit more intentionally. And any mistake that I make would have much more of an impact. Just a basic thing would be, let's say, for example, I'm coming overseas and we haven't planned out things like hospital or healthcare. God forbid my son falls in a ditch and breaks his leg. Where am I going to go? How much is it going to cost? How much is it? Like, what insurances do you take? Blah, 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 blah. So for me, I want to have all that planned out so that if you have situations like that happen, you can deal with it. The other thing is, it took so much time because I think people underestimate how much money it takes. People think Ghana is cheap, but depending on the quality of life that you want to have in Ghana, it could be just as expensive as living in New York or DC or some other place.
Yeah.
And so when you understand how much money it takes to live in Ghana, then you have to realistically, you have to have money coming in. Or you have to have a big enough savings that's gonna carry you for at least like 3 years until you can like earn some more income. So it was really mostly the financial planning, the strategic part of thinking about where we're gonna live, how close is that to this and this. And I was going to school when I came to Ghana. So like, how far is my house away from my school, transportation? So it just took a lot of time to get all those details together, man.
Understandably so. And being a fellow planner myself, I can definitely understand that. And, you know, it definitely brings me back to one of the things you mentioned, which we'll get into, like, I guess, the pros and cons of the relocation, residing in Ghana. But you mentioned something about value and cost. And being, you know, a Jamaican descent, whenever I go back, dollar value, things tend to, because of the exchange, things tend to be cheaper. You know, like it's saying, okay, one Jamaican dollar, you know, one American dollar is like 120 Jamaican dollars. So in that sense, you're thinking, okay, that's easy. But when you have to consider some of the trials you have to go through to get things, like have those resources, and you may not anticipate what it may take to buy that product that you need and those things like that, that makes it the overall trip or excursion expensive, because it's just like you mentioned it greatly when you said value and cost. But you know, we'll get back to that. But can you just tell us some of your biggest challenges adjusting to life in Ghana overall? Like, what were your top challenges?
Man. I would say the biggest challenge is, the biggest challenge would be culturally, it's so different. It's so different. Like the way we talking right now, let's say I meet you on the street, I can be like, yo, Glenn, what's poppin', man? How you feeling? And you know exactly what that means. You know exactly what that means. Simple things like communication, right? Like we communicate differently. Though English is the national language in Ghana, it ain't the same English.
Oh, no.
The way I'm talking right now, I can't talk to the average person in Ghana because I'm the person that's misunderstood. And I tell people, think about it like this. Think about when you were in school or wherever you are, and somebody comes in with a very heavy Asian or African accent. And they speak English, but you really don't know what they're talking about. Now, when you come to Ghana, you are that person. So even I think culturally, when it comes to just communicating, I think just the difference of recognizing that I'm in a culture where I'm moving into a middle class space where the average person is not doing that well. What I may spend on almond milk in a week, somebody may make in a month. So recognizing even the class issues, I think, was very challenging, because that impacts how you develop relationships. It develops how people perceive you. It develops how people treat you when they perceive you to be a person, let's say, that has money and is well off, and how they interact with you and develop relationships with you. So I think those were the things. And the last thing I think that is kind of is the biggest, one of the biggest challenges is recognizing the pervasive effects right now of colonization. The pervasive legacy of colonization is so real in Ghana, man. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I guess can you break that down for us? Because, you know, I guess understanding what that means personally, but I guess give us your interpretation of that.
Yeah, so I liken it to, like, imagine folks, when you talk about, you know, for folks out there watching like Uncle Ruckus from the Boondocks, right? If you don't know the Boondocks, just go look up Uncle Ruckus. It's like this dude that still got this slave mentality, right? So imagine, take out the slavery and put in colonization, where somebody was controlling you, somebody was telling you what to do, how to do it. And we talk about the legacy of colonization, how that's represented in society in Ghana. What I'm talking about is, what's disappointing is when you look at, let's say, for example, the curriculum. You look at the curriculum in Ghana, like, let me give it basically when my son goes to school. The fact that I have to try to convince the administrators at the school to show cartoons of African characters. And I'll give them, hey, here are some cartoons you can show with African characters. So you're not just showing them a bunch of white characters, Everybody's writing all the books. No, I'll literally give you the stuff. I'll print it out. I'll give you the link. I'll buy you the data to show it. But trying to convince the teacher and the administrators that this is important, it's like trying to speak Mandarin to somebody who's never even heard of Mandarin. So that's like, what? And then not only that, when you look at other aspects of society that I talk about in some of my videos, which is this whole parental relationship that a lot of Africa has with the West, which is a lot of people are waiting for someone to come and rescue them. That's how it was in colonization, right? You can't do anything for yourself. This place is hell. I need to get out. There's nothing here. Now, granted, there are some very real challenges in Ghana, structurally, economically, but the pervasive mentality is somebody will come and rescue me. And a big challenge, last thing I'll say about that is a big challenge for a lot of quote unquote woke Black folks is they come to Ghana with locks, you know, shea butter smelling like they stepped straight out of, you know what I'm saying? And then they come to Ghana and they see women, wigs, perms. The average person is like, I don't care about locks because that looks nasty, that looks dirty, look like a criminal. It's good to have knife shaved head like me, and I'm only doing this because I'm going bald, so I got to keep my low cut. So when you see those things, it just makes you step back and say, wow, this is very interesting. It's very interesting.
So I guess how was that? You know, when people, I think Western media has given us this perception of what it means to be African and life in Africa. And, you know, I can even think back to where even in the States, being African wasn't a thing that you mentioned. It's like, so, and it's like, how was it, I guess, you know, being, you know, someone born in America, going to Africa and still seeing these lasting effects of like colonialism and the ramifications of like slavery? Like, I guess, how was that? And I guess that also brings tribute to your organization as well, you know, I guess, and what you're trying to do to help develop the nation, but how was that overall, like still seeing that even in Africa?
Yeah, you know, it was very disheartening, but it also makes you have a sober perspective. It makes you realize that no place is perfect. And so a lot of people come to Ghana and they're just like, I got to get out of America. But they still don't have no purpose of why they want to come here. And they come here and they think it's going to be amazing and perfect. And it is. I mean, there's a lot of amazingness that happens here. But it makes you live in the reality that no place on this earth is perfect. So it's really about how do you choose, what do you choose to tolerate and not tolerate? And then, like for me, like I said, I know my purpose. And so when I see these things, it makes me realize I can't change the whole system. But now what I can do is, because I understand how deep and embedded the legacy of that is, now it gives me the opportunity to build cross-continental bridges, not just in Ghana, but help people over here in the US understand, people in Jamaica understand, people in Ghana understand, because I really believe that the leaders, the young people who are coming up into leadership, these are the ones that are going to transform the world. They may not change the whole governmental system of Ghana. They may, but they may be something as simple as equipping them to be prolific, Pan-African, very educated and like experts in medicine or education or whatever. And so for me, seeing that, it's very disappointing. But it also makes me recognize that, you know what? It makes me empathetic too. Because I see now, even why so many people are trying to get out of Ghana. Because so many people are quote unquote woke in Ghana about these things. But then, like I said, to get out of Ghana is a whole lot easier than for somebody to come in.
Understood.
They're doing some construction, so hopefully you don't hear all that banging.
No, it's all right. So let's talk about the transition of your family then. Was your wife on board with the move, or did it take some convincing for her to really gather the idea? I know, particularly with women, they don't want to leave all those connections behind and, you know, their social affiliations and things like that. How was it, I guess, did it take a lot of persuading on your end to make it happen for your family?
No, my wife is on board. My wife is also a person that she has a very flexible personality. So I don't think my wife really understood the magnitude of what we were about to do until we sold our home. And that's actually what she said. She said it didn't become real until like we left our home for the last time, knowing that we're not going. And it's a home that we weren't married in it, but that's our first home together. Our son was raised in that home. We left that home. She said, okay, it became real. The other thing is my wife has lived in different places. She's lived in South Africa, Brazil, a bunch of other places. So she's traveled. So she's used to traveling. The biggest challenge that happened, honestly, was when we actually moved to Ghana. That's when my wife had the most difficult time because, like you said, the relationships and all that. Then we came during COVID. So we came right before COVID. So just even, I mean, she's in the house all day. And in the beginning, you couldn't go nowhere. Everything is locked down and you can't develop relationships. My son was not in school. And so it was very, very, very difficult for her, not moving here, but that first year of transition, it was very difficult for her.
Gotcha. Understood. And let's go into overall, I guess, what would you say the quality of life is in Ghana versus that of America? And we'll lead that into the pros and cons. So I guess, you mentioned the duality that, Black Americans face in America. Is that still a thing? Did that contribute to the quality of life there in Ghana? And like, what are some things that you were looking for, or how would you rate the overall experience?
I would say it depends on who you are, just like any place, right? Just like in America, man, the quality of life could be great depending on your circumstance. I would say, generally speaking, most of your audiences may be from the diaspora, I'm assuming. But let's say for a person from the diaspora, if you come to Ghana and you have money, your life is great. Seriously. Because a lot of the structural issues and stuff like that the average person deals with, money builds a buffer for that. Here's a basic example. Something simple like you want to go out and pick up some groceries, but you live on a side of town where traffic is going to take you an hour. People who have money, they send their driver to go and do that. Yeah. People who have money, they send their house help or their maid to go and do that. You want to go pay a bill, but it's on the other side of town and you don't feel like people who have money, they send their house help to go pay the bill. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So money builds a buffer, or you don't want to see open sewers and smell fecal matter, right? Mm-hmm. If you have money, you move into a development where it's paved roads, maybe similar to what you're used to in the States. So if you come to Ghana and you have money, you can live, your life will be incredible because the weather is nice. People are really friendly. In terms of things like personal safety and stuff like that, it's not a concern. Generally speaking, nighttime, daytime, most places you go in Ghana, you don't fear for your safety, you don't fear for your life. And even just the things like, you don't think like, man, if I step on this dude's shoes, you know what I'm saying, he may pull out a strap. Like, you don't even think about none of that stuff. So like, overall, the quality of life, like I said, if you have, money it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I guess like being from the diaspora, like one of the things you also mentioned as well is that for people that don't have as much, they're not really given an example. And something that even with my podcast makes me discuss is we didn't really know what poor was until you realize what you didn't have, because what we made up for money in a sense was like our kinship. And, one of the things you mentioned was how America in your YouTube series, individualism is the goal of America. And however, overseas in Ghana and other countries where people may not have a lot of that financial backing, there's really value in relationships and connections in that sense. I guess, can you elaborate a little bit on that as well, as far as like the importance of connections, resources?
Man, listen, if you come to Ghana, the number one thing is relationships, because the systems don't work that well. The systems don't work. Like right now in your house, if your lights goes off, you could probably call the electricity company and they'll give you a case number, tell you Bob is going to be out at 8:35 to fix it. And if he don't come out at 8:35, here's Susan's number to fix it. And in Ghana, in most cases, not like that. Listen, in my neighborhood, the electricity goes out. I got to go and talk to my neighbor to be like, okay, who that knows somebody that can fix this? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't, and you have to know people on all levels, and that's the thing, like you have to know people in high positions. You have to know people in low positions, because those people in low positions, oftentimes, they're the ones who got the scoop about everything. And they can help you just on basic things like, man, like, how do I get this or how do I get that? So I would tell people, for me, what I've experienced in Ghana is the greatest currency is relationships. Relationships a process on your own that will take you 2 months to do, relationships in Ghana will take you 2 days. Facts. Relationships are the greatest currency in Ghana.
Understood. Understood. So let's talk about your pros and cons. If you could limit it to the three, and it could be a combination. It could be 2 pros and a con, or 3 pros, 3 cons. What were your biggest ones? Like, what were some of your pros and cons to living in Ghana?
I think the biggest pro would be the ability to live in a nation where I can just exist as a human being. No amount of money can pay for that, man. There's no amount of money that can even describe the level of freedom that is. No amount of money. When you can just walk down the street and know that there's some stuff that may happen to me, but it's not going to be because of the color of my skin. I cannot describe how psychologically liberating and emotionally and spiritually liberating that is. That's the absolute positive biggest thing. No, money can't pay for that. I would say another pro is the ability to raise my son in an environment where he can just simply be a kid. I don't have to explain to him right now police brutality, or if the police pull you over, or this. I don't have to explain that stuff to him right now. In fact, somebody brought me some books from the States about like children's book about like what to do when the police stop you. And I'm all for like those educational materials. I'm just thinking like, wow, like my son doesn't have to know that right now. Exactly. So to be able to raise him in an environment where that he can just be a kid, I think is powerful. I think the biggest con would be recognizing that Ghana is still a developing place, and there's a lot of structural issues that really can be indescribably frustrating for a person that's coming from, let's say, a developed nation like America. Mm-hmm. It can be absolutely infuriating to just get basic things done in that kind of system.
Understood. All right. So with that, can you share a moment of culture shock that you experienced when it said, all right, this is real, I'm somewhere else, like I'm in Ghana? Like, what's an experience you had like that you'd like to share?
Man, there's so many, but I would think one of the biggest things is, like I talked about my son's school kind of situation. I think one of the biggest culture shocks is, I say a story would be when I had a relationship with, let's say, a contractor, and worked with this person for like a number of years, maybe like 10 years or so. And then all of a sudden one day, the person just started emailing me saying that we're wicked, we're evil people, and all this other kind of crazy stuff. And it actually happened before I moved to Ghana, but it was still a moment of culture shock. But we tried to find out what was going on, and the person basically said, we haven't been taking care of them. We haven't been giving them enough money for salary and all this kind of stuff. Now, keep in mind, we know this person every time we connect with the person, yo, this is how much money we're gonna pay you. Is it cool? Whatever. Long story short, the person asked us to reconcile. He said, I need $10,000. I need 10 racks.
Wow.
He was 100% serious.
Wow.
The shock of it was, we've been working with you for 10 years. All of a sudden, we get an email calling us wicked and all this, and you are demanding $10,000 from us. Like, who do you think we are? And the fact that you believe that we should be taking care of you and your son and your daughters that we didn't even know about, by the way. But the mentality is, for 10 years, we can have a relationship with you that we thought was good, but then just to realize that what you envisioned it was totally different than what it really was. And that's, like I said, that's rooting that colonial kind of mind state of, you're coming from America, so your job is to make sure that I'm taken care of. You don't have any responsibility on yourself to do that. You don't have to communicate your needs and what works. No. Me as an American, I'm just supposed to know everything. So that was really shocking, and it just showed me the depths of, some of the mental change that we still have on us, man.
Understood. And do you think that had anything to do with essentially your standing? Because one thing you mentioned is that, you're not dealing with being Black in Ghana. You're coming in as an American in Ghana. And, being someone from the West Indies, I understand, what that means when you travel. Even times when I travel back home, there's this expectation that, money grows on trees, and as you mentioned, Oprah Winfrey money, and it's just
exactly.
like, there's no expense to you. You have all these infinite resources, and it was a term you coined called, I believe it was called Obruni, or like the foreigner treatment. I guess basically, can you explain a little bit about that as well? Like, I guess like that lends to this culture shock experience. Like,
it's like, I try to tell people, it's like, imagine how we in the US, some of us who may see athletes or entertainers and think, man, that person ain't got no problems because they're a millionaire. They can't have any problems. They're rich. Now, granted, that person may have a lot of money, but that person may be broke. They may make $5 million, but spend $6 million a year. We don't know that. But it's the perception that they have no problems and everything is good. So when a Black person comes from America, they're no longer Black. They're just seen as American. So they see us as, whether you're Chinese, if you come from America, you are American. And the idea of an American is you have money, you're rich, you are smarter than us, you're more advanced than us, you can solve problems better than us, and you should be telling us what to do. Not everybody. Now, granted, this is not everybody. For the listeners out there getting turned up, I know some of my Ghanaian brothers like, nah, he wrong. It's not everybody. It's not everybody. But largely, that is a thing that exists. So in this situation with the dude, culturally, I talk about differences. Americans, we kind of say what we want. If we don't like something, I don't like that. But in Ghana, you're not taught to do that because the culture teaches you just to shut up, mind your business, put your head down, don't say nothing, just take what somebody gives you. So this brother in 10 years never said, listen, man, I need this much money to live. We paid for the brother's school. We paid for him to get a trade. But the culture is, you got money, you should always be giving it to me. It's an entitlement kind of philosophy sometimes. And so I'm sure that he saw us, or it may have been even him having friends, right? Of saying, listen, you've been with them Americans for how long? 10 years? You ain't got a car yet? You ain't got your own house yet? Come on, bro. They playing you. All the money they got, and look at you still in this shack. So I can imagine it may have been even some of that going on when he's like, hey, man, you right, man, you right. I don't know, I'm just saying, but I can imagine that was the situation. So, but yeah, that definitely, that cultural difference definitely plays into it.
Understood. Now, I guess speaking on the topic of culture shock, you're born in Texas, and I know south side of Houston, they have some great food out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, barbecue, all that, turkey leg head, all that. How was it adjusting to the food in Ghana? Like knowing that, there were some things that you may have to live without moving forward. Like, how was it adjusting to that?
It was cool, man. I think that I'm a picky eater, by the way. So some people, they just float. I'm a picky eater. I usually eat the same thing almost every day. Every morning, almost at least 6 days out of the week, I drink the same smoothie every morning.
Yeah.
So either that or oatmeal. So, and I love Trader Joe's, man, back in the States. Man. Listen, Trader Joe's was my joint, dog. That was my joint, dog.
Yeah.
So when I came to Ghana, I love the traditional food. But at this point in my life, man, a lot of it is so oily. It's like soul food. Soul food tastes so good, but the best food is the worst for you.
Yeah.
And so in Ghana, it's like the food tastes so good, but a lot of it is the worst for you, man. The oil and stuff like I love certain foods. Like one of the foods is called contumere stew, and it's like I don't know, like greens and some other stuff, but they put it in so much oil that it's not good for you. So the adjustment was like basically trying to find somewhat American foods in Ghana, which are more expensive, not because I don't like the Ghanaian food, but just because it's like, at this point in my life, man, my diet is like, I can't be eating all that oil and stuff, man. Mess me up.
I hear you. So it wasn't difficult, I guess, keeping some of the things that you liked a lot, in the States and I guess food-wise, and bringing that over to Ghana or finding it in Ghana. So there's always options.
No, I ain't gonna lie, it's difficult, bro. It's difficult. I'm not gonna be like, no, it's difficult. Because I remember one day I was like, man, I just want some cereal. Man, I bought some honeycombs. I should have known not to buy no honeycombs in Ghana. Bro, I opened that bag of honeycombs up. It tasted like styrofoam. Because, just think about it, right? Like if you're not manufacturing stuff locally, you're gonna have to ship it from outside. If you're shipping it from outside, depending on how they ship it, It may take days, it may take weeks, it may take months. The other thing is a lot of the American stuff is so much more expensive. So it may be coming from like, I hate to say this, but it's almost like, have you ever bought food at a dollar store? And imagine the variety of food that's at the dollar store.
Exactly.
That's how it is in Ghana a lot of times with American food. It's like shopping at the dollar store for food.
Yeah. So there's like pretty much can be an issue with quality depending on where you are and essentially what you can afford.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless it's local food. I tell people, this is my opinion, I seldom have good food experiences with non-Ghanaian dishes. When it comes to Ghanaian dishes, banging. But non-Ghanaian dishes, I've seldom had a good food experience. But I mean, it is what it is.
Exactly. All right, good point. So I've seen other people's experiences in Ghana, and you know, there's a myriad of them. Some of them are successful, some of them are not as successful. You have people that have gone to Africa, other parts of Africa as well, and had to return back to the United States. So, you know, one of the things that was mentioned, you know, and even with I've seen from Africans, you know, speaking on their experiences dealing with, you know, expats, is the importance of getting involved in your communities. Because, you know, in America, you can, you know, live somewhere and not even know who lives next to you. You know what I mean? You can, you know, reside in a place and be completely isolated and, you know, live to your standard of living. Is there any importance in people that are relocating becoming a part of their communities? Like, is that an important thing to do? Like to become ingrained with, try to get familiar with the language, the culture? Or is the idea that you come here, you're safe, you're a Black person, but you just isolate yourself completely?
Yeah, that's a really good question, man. And it's so easy to do because you realize it's just so different, man. Culturally, it's so different. And I think it's easy for a lot of Black folks just to hang around other Black folks because it's easier. You can go, we can talk like this at the simple rate of speech that I'm talking like, and I know you're gonna get everything I'm saying. Like I said, I can say, yo, what's up, bro? You good? You straight? You all right? What's popping? You like, so it's easier to do that. And I don't even blame people who do it, man, to be honest with you, who come to Ghana and do that, because when you come sometimes, I know what it feels like for people to always look at you like you're a meal. After a while, you just don't want to experience that too. So you want to be around people who can think and live like you. So I think that if you want to come and make an impact, and I'm not saying that you got to come and try to rebuild the country, but if you're going to come and do business, if you're going to come and be involved, like there's no way you're going to do any of those things without being involved in the community. And the thing about Ghana is the community in most parts is so close in terms of socioeconomically. You can literally have, the way our screen is split, $1 million house right here, a shack with no water right next to it. So you have to confront those different social classes that exist. And I think when you have the ability to do that, it gives you perspective about how blessed you are, but it also gives you the opportunity to recognize where you can make an impact. And everything in NGO, man, you know, it's business too. Like you can even see the opportunities for business. Like I have a friend that came and, you know, there's a lot of trash in Ghana, everywhere. She started a trash business. That's what she does. And some other people that came in, there's not, you don't have as much access to public toilets. You know what I'm saying? In Ghana, they have a mobile, basically a mobile toilet business where they do luxury restrooms, go to events and stuff. So there's opportunities as well that happens when you become integrated and when you become in proximity with people, because you can see, you can hear, you can listen, you can understand, and then you can try to see, okay, how can I then create opportunities, which helps you out because it gives you an opportunity to create income.
Exactly. Yeah, those are all great ideas as well for our listeners, especially. Like, there's actually an opportunity to capitalize, bring some of those conveniences we have here over, and, you know, help develop the nation in that same vein and be a part of your community. Like, that's not an opportunity a lot of us are afforded here in the States. And the people that have tried to make changes in America, we've seen what, you know, the end result usually is. So let's talk about the transition of family and career. I understand you actually attended graduate school in Ghana as well.
Yeah, I did. So it was one of the reasons why I came here too. I wanted to do a PhD program, and I knew I didn't want to do it in the States. I wanted to focus on particularly Christianity, but from an African perspective, and also look at pre-colonial, pre-missionary African spiritual religion, where you gonna find that in the U.S.? Ain't gonna find it. So, so I came to school in Ghana. I did a master's program in theology at an institution that unapologetically focusing on looking at religion and theology from an African perspective. So you look at traditional African religion and you learn so much about that. So it was a really empowering experience. It made me realize two things. Number one, like our culture is so deep in terms of Africans and why people do so much rituals, and like it's so crazy how deep it is. The other thing it made me realize is, well, I ain't got time for a PhD program right now in my life. It's too much.
Yeah.
But it was a really good process, man. The school was a year, and I learned a lot. It really made me recognize also how much legacy was stolen from us.
Mm.
Like even when I think about things like marriage in Ghana, marriage is just not like I like you, like me, let's get married. It's like, no, go to the family. You got to present yourself before this. You got to bring gifts, get the mother's approval, father's approval. The dad don't like you, it ain't gonna like. It's so deep and it's so serious.
Mm-hmm.
It made me realize, okay, even naming ceremonies. When you name a child, this has to happen. This on the third day. This happens. That happened. And it made me realize, like, wow, like there's so much culture that was lost as a result of that transatlantic, and there was so much meaning in all of those things that I see why the African who's conscious, who's seen some of the realities in Ghana or Nigeria, can come to America and just be like, shoo, because he or she knows exactly who they are and where they come from, versus a lot of us as Black folks. No, and it's not a disrespectful thing, but we just name our children based off of what sounds good because we don't know. You know what I'm saying? And so it showed me that, man, there's so much culture, man. There's so much culture that's crazy.
And that's definitely a great point there. Like almost like rekindling, like that sense of belonging and that sense of, affiliation, that kinship that we're missing here essentially can't be found. And you find yourself, not as an American, but I mean, would you say that you are slowly becoming more Ghanaian every day? Like, what is the goal? I would say, and this is off the cuff question, like for your son, do you want him to recognize himself as a Ghanaian or as always an American in Ghana?
Yeah, I asked my son, I say, where are you from? He says, Africa. Because the truth is, he's not Ghanaian, he's American. And even the other day at school, the kids were doing, where are you from? Right, so other kids would say, I'm from this region, I'm from that region. And he came home, he said, Daddy, what region am I from? I said, oh, you're from America, but you're African.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to say he's Ghanaian, or myself, I can't say that because I literally don't know where I'm from. But I did an interview with a woman that, man, she surmised it beautifully. She teaches at Howard. She said, as African Americans, we have to learn to live in the hyphen.
Mm.
And she says that we're African hyphen American. And there's a beauty of that. And when we realize that we have this dual identity, it helps us to be able to recognize how we can also galvanize other people like ourselves. You don't have to pick and choose. Because let's be honest, myself, I'm not Ghanaian. I'll never be Ghanaian. I don't want to. My son, he's not Ghanaian because when someone asks him, where do you come from? He will never have an answer for that.
Mm.
And that will constantly traumatize him. But for him to understand that, man, you're privileged. I looked at him the other day, I said, man, he don't know it because he's 4. I said, man, you done been in more places by the age of 5 than I did my first 25 years of life. But for him to be in an environment where he knows that he's blessed, mommy and daddy are educated, he's African. Let me put it like that, he's African. Yeah. That's what he is, he's African.
And I think it definitely, you hadn't placed a term, I think that encapsulates that perfectly. You said that even if you don't fit in, you're still accepted.
Exactly.
And I think that was a pretty powerful point there, knowing that, even though you're not from here, you can find a home here. As opposed, on the opposite side of the spectrum, that's not necessarily the case. You're born here and you're still wondering, do I really belong?
Yeah.
So I guess I'll get to my last 2 points before we can wrap it up, and I'll chime on these two. Are there any aspects of your former life in America that you wish you could bring to Ghana, and vice versa? Are there any aspects of life in Ghana that you wish you could bring to America if you could?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say number one, man, you've really done, I can see, man, you've done a lot of your research. So I can tell you're a professional. But I think that's a really great question. The only thing I would say is just, I mean, if I want to keep 100, man, the convenience, man. I didn't realize how convenient life is in America. But also there's room for, that's why there's room for opportunity, because other people in Ghana want that same convenience.
Mm-hmm.
You can bring it and monetize it. So just the convenience, man, of being able to, you know, get in a car and go to the store and do like 5 things in one day, versus in Ghana where it's like, if you do one thing in a day, you're you've done well. You've done really well. I'm talking about something simple like paying the electricity bill. Like, so just the convenience. The stuff that I wish we can import in terms of cultural values into America, I think, man, the biggest thing is just that there's so much peace here, and it's just a lot of peace. And generally speaking, there is a deeper concern for each other in Ghana as human beings, of just like on a level of like, just, I see you as a human being, I know you exist, and there's still a deeper concern for each other. And I think that I've been reflecting a lot about what they would look like in the States, where in our Black communities, the people knew who they were, and you could feel safe enough to walk down the street and know that if I look at this brother in any kind of way, he's not going to get turned up because that means I'm trying to square up on him. Because he's peaceful within himself. He understands who he is. And he generally sees me as a creature created by God. To destroy me will be to destroy a part of God. I think that piece, if we can bring some of that to the States, man, I think that would be amazing, because peace, like that kind of stuff, you can't put a price tag on. And I'm telling you, the last thing I'll say is, it feels amazing, not just the Black aspect, but to be able, like I said, walk down the street, man, and I'm not worried that, even if I have a confrontation with somebody, I'm not worried that this is going to turn into a deadly situation.
Exactly.
Because in most cases it doesn't. It can, but in most cases it doesn't. Yeah, okay. So just the peace, man.
Yeah, that's a big, strong point, because one of our episodes, we talked about Black mental health, and it was just always being thrown into this state of defense and attack all the time. And just the toll that it takes. And sometimes I even experience it when I go back home to Jamaica, you know, just being in that environment. I don't know what it is, but I just ultimately feel healthier. Like, I feel at peace. I feel like, you know, at some point, despite, you know, the disparities there, it's never been an issue of me existing. It's never been the problem, you know, where my sole existence is the issue. It's just, okay, how can we help develop this nation? That's it.
Yeah.
And because we got to think, some of these countries didn't get independence until maybe a decade ago, you know, several decades ago. So exactly, they're still very young. All right, so our last 2 points. Before making the move, how can we assess our readiness to relocate? Like, what are the top things? Like, is there like a certain amount of money you need to have before you do so? Or, you know, what are some things we should consider if you were to boil it down to maybe 2 or 3? You know, these are the things you need to have before you're ready to make the move, so you make it as successful and enjoyable as possible.
I always tell people the number one thing you need to have is get your budget together. If you want to have a similar quality of life as the States, and people say, no, I don't need to have a similar quality of life. Let me break it down. If you want to have electricity and water that doesn't cut off, if you want to have covered sewers, if you want to have, like, you don't see trash, like the basic stuff. Let's just say you're a single person coming to Ghana. You're probably gonna need minimally, you can do really well minimally, but like bringing home $20,000 a year. That's just for your Ghana expenses. They don't include whatever expenses you have in the US, your insurances or whatever. And I would say 20,000 simply because a place in itself is a decent place. If you're single, no kids, in a decent area, like a subdivision, it's gonna run you probably about $700 to $800 a month.
700, okay.
And you're gonna pay that 12 months in advance or 24 months in advance.
Yeah.
So you're going to come off of 10, 15 racks up front.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a stable income, that 2 years that you paid in advance, when you got to re-up with 20 racks up front, that'll hit
hard.
you.
That's
hard. So you have to have your money together. That's the, I don't even say 2, 3, 4, 5 points. The first thing is you have to have your money together in a stable source of income, preferably in dollars if you're coming from the UK somewhere, pounds, because if you do that, you will at least have the peace of knowing that you can create the kind of life where you can function, where you can work, where you don't have to worry about, like, you know, cows pooping right in front of your house as soon as you walk out. Well, you think it sounds cool, but it's not cool. It's not cool, trust me.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking on that financial aspect, definitely. So y'all hear that directly. You know, make sure your funds are in order. Give yourself a cushion, and that even could be just in case things don't work out for you. Maybe you realize it's not for you. There are other places in the world you can go to. So just having that financial readiness and, you know, understanding, you know, definitely important. All right. So lastly, do you have anything in the works currently you'd like to share with our listeners, or any final tips for consideration, or anything going on currently you should stay posted on?
Man, I just recommend folks definitely follow the page, follow me on Instagram, as well as follow the YouTube. Got some great things coming up. Actually, I'm in the process now of launching relocation services for people who want to relocate, where we really just break down everything from the time you have the idea of relocating to Ghana to actually helping you walk through every single process to make that happen. So working on getting it together. The way you can stay connected with that is via my YouTube as well as my Instagram. I always have all my information on there. So I just encourage people, man, just to, follow my channel, follow other channels too, because you get so many different perspectives. My perspective is only one perspective. If you're a single person, all the kids stuff I'm talking about may not be for you, but you'll follow somebody else that talks more about the nightlife and all that. So follow as many channels as you can as possible about Ghana and relocating to Ghana, so you can get that well-rounded perspective. And, but again, I reiterate, get your money together if you think about moving. If you take the time to get your money together, you'll be light years ahead of a lot of people. That's the number one thing that will get people, man, not having enough money planned.
Understood. And thanks on that point, as far as following you, we'll provide the details in our description and our post as well. But real quickly, you can follow Mr. Tim Swain on IG, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Mr. Tim Swain. His website is mrtimswain.com, and you can find him on YouTube. Subscribe and follow at Tim Swain for his personal content, where he talks about his moves and his experiences. And also, you have another segment where you talk to entrepreneurs, you know, from all parts of the world coming to Ghana to get started and bring, you know, certain nuances and unique things and help develop the nation as well. So it's definitely on the up and up. It's always been up, but definitely becoming more and more of a developing nation. All right. So with that said, for more content or learn more about the podcast, feel free to check us out at Jollof Collard Pod on Instagram. Podcast episodes drop every Wednesday, so be sure to follow us. Stay tuned for the outro coming right up after this to learn additional ways to reach us and send us your feedback. Be sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe. Feel free to leave us a review on your preferred streaming platform of choice. Thank you again, Mr. Tim Swain, for coming in, making the arrangements. Like, you've been, you know, helping me drive this discussion and helping me stay on top of it. So I definitely appreciate it. And apart from that, everyone stay blessed. And as always, keep it cultured.
And that concludes today's episode, but that doesn't mean the conversation has to end. As a matter of fact, feel free to check us out at JJC Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter for our post-discussion question following the release of this episode. If you are a Black or minority business owner or professional that would like to be featured on the Rep Yours segment of our show, or a listener with some general feedback for the podcast panel, feel free to shoot us an email at jjcpod@gmail.com. As always, likes and comments are always appreciated. Be sure to subscribe or follow to be notified when the next episode releases. And until then, stay safe, stay blessed. Peace.